I tend to be wary of marketing gimmicks in whiskey, and one of the oldest marketing tricks in the book is a celebrity tie-in or collaboration. Pair this with an unusual finishing cask for the whiskey, and you've got me skeptical. However, like all things in life, there are exceptions, and for me, when it comes to the world of celebrity marketed whiskey, the Lagavulin Offerman Edition is that exception. The fourth and latest edition of the Lagavulin Offerman Edition has arrived, delivering us a new take on this classic of Islay, this time a Caribbean rum cask finish. Is this whiskey worth your time and money, or is it just another marketing gimmick? Let's find out. My name is Matt, this is Whiskey on the West Coast. If you're not familiar with Nick Offerman, he's an American actor, comedian, author, and woodworker, notable for roles in shows like Parks and Recreation or The Last of Us. He also happens to be a huge whiskey fan, and that's a part of himself that happens to show up in his Lagavulin-loving Parks and Recreation character, Ron Swanson. It became such a big part of his character on the show that the show actually features a visit to Islay and Lagavulin in the 6th season. Now, Lagavulin and Offerman first teamed up back in 2014 for a series of YouTube videos. They've continued doing this ever since. 5 years later, in 2019, they decided to collaborate on the first Lagavulin Offerman Edition 11-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey. The second release in the Offerman Editions featured a 4-month finishing period in Guinness Stout Cask, so ex-beer casks. The third edition was aged in heavily charred ex-bourbon and ex-red wine casks, STR casks, which brings us to this fourth edition, which underwent an 8-month finishing period in Caribbean rum casks. And it comes in yet another slick box and bottle here. Really cool packaging. And I gotta be honest and say that I started off a bit skeptical with this whiskey. Why am I skeptical? Well, for me, rum casks are kind of a wild card. Most rum casks start their life as ex-bourbon casks, which to me kind of makes ex-rum casks essentially like refill ex-bourbon casks with a twist. So it all comes down to how much faith you have in the impact that 8 months in a rum cask can make. I've had success with rum cask finishes when it comes to rye whiskeys, but I am leery of the same being done to my precious Islay single malt. Skepticism aside, there are reasons for optimism with these Offerman editions. All 4 of the Lagavulin Offerman editions have carried 11-year age statements. It would have been easy for them to make these non-age stated. However, they have always come with an 11-year age statement. As well, the bottling strength has always been 46% for each of these releases. That's a bottling strength that many fans of this story would love to see Lagavulin pump the Lagavulin 16 up to, where it sits now at 43%. So those are both really encouraging factors with these Offerman editions. Personally, I have enjoyed both the Guinness Cask Offerman Edition as well as the Charred Oak Cask editions in the past. So let's see how this one holds up to those two. The vital stats on the Lagavulin Offerman Edition Caribbean Rum Cask finish is Islay Single Malt Scotch Whisky. It is the 4th edition of the Offerman series, 11 years old, 46% ABV. It probably is chill filtered, despite the bottling strength being at 46% ABV, and it's most likely has E150A caramel coloring added. I don't see any information opposite of this. If I am incorrect, please correct me in the comments. However, I compared the color of this to the Charred Oak Cask finish, the last edition, the 3rd edition of Offerman, and they were nearly identical in color. I don't see why that would be if they weren't adding E150A caramel colorant to it. Now, the price, it was about $125 Canadian. I'm seeing it running about $90 US in the States. However, pricing obviously is market specific, so your market might have a different price than what I'm seeing. Primary maturation was in ex-bourbon and sherry casks, and it underwent again an 8-month finish in Caribbean or ex-Caribbean rum casks. All right, on the nose. Right away, it's this bright salted lemon citrus. Sweet salted lemon citrus, like pineapple, guava, and this like creosote, like thick peat smoke. but it's super fruity. The first thing that you get off this nose is just the fruitiness, the fruit bomb nature of this. You also get like vanilla and almost like flambéed like coconut cream pie with that smoke element. And when I consider all the things I get on the nose on this, and honestly, right from the neck pour, if you believe in neck pours, I don't know, but right from the neck pour when I first cracked this bottle open, it just came off so fruity. And I was like, okay, so like rum, coconut, cream, pineapple. This is a pina colada on the nose. This is a smoked pina colada, which is such a cool like picture and image and way to kind of wrap up this nose in a succinct fashion. So I think I'm going to leave it at that for the most part. I mean, it's a fun, fruity dram on the nose. My first glass of this was with Watchman 999, Greg, from Calgary. And he was visiting, and thank you so much for meeting up, Greg. That was a lot of fun to share some drams on the river. And my first glass of this, I cracked the bottle when we met up, poured it, had it outside. I can say this whiskey, it holds up really well outside. Some whiskeys, they just don't nose very well. You can't fully appreciate them when you're in the outdoors. This whiskey was phenomenal outdoors. I'd bring this to a campfire any day. This is great. But yeah, smoked pina colada on the nose. All right, let's hit the palate. Honeyed and sweet, tropical fruits, but not like in the old like ex-bourbon well-aged style. This is very much pulling these, I believe, from the rum cask, maybe a bit from some ex-bourbon casks, but yeah. And then after that fruit, after those sweets, after that honey and everything else, some toffee, a little bit of butterscotch, after that you get a hit with a big phenolic blast. The peat smoke is much more present on the palate than it is on the nose. The nose, it's kind of blunted. It's not nearly as prominent. You're getting all those other things I was talking about first, or kind of just like intermingled with the smoke. Here, the smoke and the phenolics, the peat, they make their presence known real fast, in a hurry. Oh man, another sip here. Some maritime brine here for sure. Quite maritime, honestly, if you compare it to something like the Charred Oak Cask from the 3rd edition of Lagavulin. And that's going to be my main comparison here, is to that most recent other Lagavulin Offerman Edition release. The combination of the phenolics with some like pepper, like spicing here, really makes me think of almost like charred, like burnt ends, like the steak char, the char on the outside of a steak. Slight peppers, almost like Montreal like steak spice, if you're familiar with that. It's just the interplay here between the bright fruits and the sweets and the dark phenolics with that kind of spicy peppering. It's just really, it's really interesting. It's really engaging. And right from the first glass of this whiskey, I've been hooked. Like, I think this is a crushable Lagavulin. I think it's going to be a killer summer dram. Yeah, all right, one more sip. We'll talk a little bit about the finish, spend a little bit of time trying to focus on that. But as you can tell, I am really enjoying this whiskey. Yeah, that's really lovely, engaging stuff there. Really nice, well-sustained finish is the way I would describe it. 46% ABV, I'm sure, helps an awful lot to help deliver a finish that isn't resolving too quickly. It helps pack a bit more in here. The finish, the main flavors I'm getting are like pepper, honey, smoke. Not so much on the fruit on the finish, and I wouldn't necessarily expect that to be the case either. Really, again, a very engaging whiskey. So let's talk about some of my conclusions with this whiskey. Before we get to my final conclusions here, guys, I just really wanted to thank you so much for watching this far. Thank you so much to my dear Patreon subscribers. Thanks for supporting me in that way. I hope to bring you guys more content soon. And thank you to anyone who supports this channel by subscribing and watching the videos and engaging in the comments. Speaking of those comments, leave a comment down below your thoughts on this whiskey if you've had it, but really I'd be more interested in just hearing what has been your favorite Lagavulin Offerman Edition so far, of the ones you've had. If you haven't had any of them, tell me which one interests you the most of all 4 that have been released. All right, conclusions. First off, Gimmick or good whiskey? Which is this? And you probably can guess from my tasting notes I gave on this, but I'm gonna say this is a good whiskey. I was skeptical, and I don't really love cutting Diageo any slack here, but this is a fun and deliciously drinkable whiskey. This bottle may go very quickly down in fill level and off my shelf. I don't know, this might be the first Diageo product in a long time that is a repeat purchase for me. That's high praise. Again, don't love giving it to Diageo because they annoy me with a lot of the things they do, but they do get some things right. This bottle, I think, is one of them. Is it my favorite in the Offerman Edition series? That's hard for me to say. I really loved the darker chocolatey roasted malt tones of the Guinness cask finish. However, I didn't have much time with that bottle. That's because that bottle was destroyed in the apartment fire that I had a couple years ago. And so my memory isn't really very clear of exactly how that whiskey is for me. I don't really have a good grip on that one. I'd love to have another bottle of that so I could compare it again, but it's just not available to me. I can compare it and have compared it to the 3rd edition of the Lagavulin Offerman Edition, the Charred Oak Cask. And I would say that I am loving this one in comparison to that. That one is much more muted. It's much more dark, almost like malty and sweet tones. This is more on the fruity side. The smoke is a lot more present. There's more of a maritime flair to it too, with the salty brininess. Honestly, I think this is like by far superior to that Charred Oak Cask 3rd edition of the Offerman series. I think it just blasted out of the water, honestly. Finally, who would enjoy this whiskey? Who is this for? This is for anyone who enjoys Islay peated smoky whiskey. It's absolutely, especially for anyone who's a Lagavulin fan, someone who wants a departure from the 8-year-old, the 16 or the 12 cask strength even. It really is a well-executed new spin on Lagavulin whiskey that presents really well at 46% ABV. And that's one of the things, again, I've loved about these Offerman editions. Age statements, 46% ABV. There's a lot of things we'd like Diageo to do better, but I'm going to give them credit for those 2 points for sure. All right, guys, I'm going to get to the score here. My score for this is going to be an 87 out of 100. Again, if that sounds low to you, I think in the context, in the grand scheme of whiskey, it's actually a really high score. Things that score 90 are incredibly special. 87 is a really great score. And I'm trying to be a little more critical with my scores these days. So 87, that's a top-notch score. As you heard, this might be a repeat purchase for me. So if anything, scores are kind of, they're subjective. Take my words for what they are. I'm enjoying this whiskey enough to consider buying a second bottle. Thank you so much, guys. I think this is fair value for in the whiskey market today at about $125 Canadian for a limited release, a new twist from one of Islay's most popular distilleries. Yeah, I think it's hard to go wrong with this. Thanks so much for watching once again. I hope you return back for another video in the future. From the West Coast, Slàinte.